Today, the U.S. houses about 5% of the world's world's population, and in correlation, the United States holds about 25% of the world's prison population. This means out of every 4 people, at least one of those persons has been locked up in a cold, uncomfortable, tightly packed cell. And it's statistics like these that shine a light on a problem that is increasing day by day in America. The problem of mass incarceration and how we as a nation handle our prisons and our prisoners. So today, I will be discussing this topic with you. I feel I am credible to speak on this topic because I've done extensive research on it, and as Evan said, I grew up in poverty, and I feel our prison system targets people of color and people in poverty. So first, I will be talking about the problems with our prison system, what policies. Second, I will be talking about what policies could help fix it, and third, I will be talking about the effects of said policies. As stated before, the U.S. holds about 25% of the world's prison population, and this number is increasing day by day. One likely reason I believe that it is increasing is due to mandatory minimum drug laws and the 3-strike rule enacted by the Nixon administration in the 1970s. This was the beginning of the war on drugs and getting tough on crime. These laws, I believe, were actually made to punish low-level drug offenders, non-violent drug offenders. For example, the story of a man named Jeff Menzeski. In 1971, Jeff was convicted of breaking the 3-strike law. His first strike was selling a small amount of marijuana to one of his family members. His second strike was owning 3 ounces of marijuana inside his own home, and his third strike was going to a hotel to buy a small amount of marijuana from an undercover cop. Jeff was sentenced to life in prison with no parole. Now, I honestly don't believe that the crime fits the time. He served 21 years of his life in prison, but was later released due to a petition being signed stating that basically the crime doesn't fit the time. And he's not the only one. According to the ACLU, there are currently 3,278 prisoners serving life without parole in prison due to non-violent drug crimes, and that number is only increasing. Our prisons are filled with non-violent drug offenders. We keep stocking them in there, but who benefits from putting so many people in prison? Well, I believe the answer is private prison companies do. They've admitted to it too. In fact, a report filed with the Correction Corporations of America, one of the largest private prison industries, in 2010 stated, and I quote, "The demand for our facilities and services could be adversely affected by leniency in conviction or parole standards and harsh sentencing." What this shows us is that private prison industries receive funding based on how many prisoners they can stock in their prisons. And none of the funding that they receive ends up going towards the prison. In fact, it ends up going towards the CEO of prisons. In 2010, the 2 largest private prison industries received over $3 billion in revenue, and their top executives received over $3 million in compensation packages, according to the ACLU. And since none of this funding ends up going actually back into the prison, this leads to terrible conditions, such as lower quality of meals. I mean, meals have even been found to have maggots in them. This leads to overcrowding, and overcrowding leads to a higher percentage of disease spreading and a lower sanitation. It also leads to a higher use of solitary confinement, which has been shown to be pretty much torture. Cutting funding towards this prison also leads to cutting up programs that help prisoners get out of prison and have a life outside of prison, such as GED programs and trade programs. Now, finding a job as a convicted felon once you get out is tough enough. We lock these people up for 10, 25 years and expect them to go on with their life. Now, trying to find a job when you're a convicted felon and having no skills or trade whatsoever is pretty much impossible. But what are some solutions that can fix our prisons? Well, I believe one of these solutions is taking away or reducing mandatory minimum drug laws that help bulk our prisons. They were made to help decrease crime when in fact they have not shown to do so. In fact, they only promote even more crime. Sentencing low-level drug offenders only increases the chance that they will commit a crime once they get out. This is according to lawenforcementleaders.org. My second solution is I believe we need to focus on reducing recidivism rates, or the percentage that people end up back in jail, and focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment, because the U.S. is really, really good about punishment. We're good at putting people in these prisons saying, do your time, but we don't ever think about what happens once they get out. We put these people in prison with no skills or no trade for 25 years, and we tell them, good luck. Now that I've talked a little bit about some of the solutions that I believe could help fix our prisons, I will talk about some of the effects of said solutions. In 2011, Kentucky reduced its mandatory minimum drug laws, and in 1 year, the prison population dropped by more than 1,400 people, saving the state $20,000 a person. That money was funded back into drug treatment services for prisoners, and Kentucky's crime rate has been in an all-time low since. This is according to lawenforcementleaders.org. In 2007, Texas estimated that it would need about $2 billion for prison beds. State legislature did not approve this $2 billion, but instead approved $241 million towards probation, parole, and trade programs. Results were immediate, and recidivism fell 25%. In the first 2 years, prison population dropped by 9,000, and this was a total savings of $443 million. That's a lot of money that can be put back into our prisons to make it better. And since Texas has closed 3 of its prisons that were not needed, since we're not stocking so many people. This is according to the New York Post. So today, first I went over the problems with our prison system. Second, I went over a little bit of the solutions that could possibly help fix our prisons. And third, I talked about the effects of said prisons. So in conclusion, I believe that the way we have our prison system, it needs a lot of fixing. Big private prison companies treat our prisoners like merchandise and stock them inside these prisons to receive funding. And this is plain wrong. And I believe we can fix this by getting rid of these mandatory minimum drug laws, or at least reducing them. That they only stock people inside of our prisons. And I believe we can fix it by at least giving these people a chance by giving them trade programs, or giving some sort of program to provide them a chance once they get out. At one point, we wanted to get tough on crime. And I totally get that. Crime is terrible, and terrible things happen to people, and that's awful. But at some point, we mixed up getting tough on crime with getting tough on criminals, and that just isn't the same thing. So I encourage you to contact your state senators, legislature, whatever you want, and tell them there is a way we can fix this. Thank you.